I'm gonna make my braised beef. So today I'm gonna be showing you how to make my homemade braised beef. It is maybe my best recipe ever, and it's good for you, and it tastes absolutely incredible. You're not even gonna miss having rice or mashed potatoes with it. Just as is absolutely incredible, super filling, and so nutritious and delicious. Go ahead and take a look. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I have beef chuck short ribs. They're boneless. I got these at Costco. This much for $50, $51, and this is about 4 pounds. So some people, they cut it into like 2 to 3 or 4 inch chunks before they sear. I'm a little bit lazy with that, so I'm just gonna sear it as it is. So I'm not flipping over like a million little pieces. And I just have some avocado oil in the pan just because that handles the higher heat better. I like to use butter a lot when I'm cooking, but I don't want, because I'm gonna be kind of trying to get a little bit of brown on here, I don't want the butter to burn before this all gets settled. So I just want a little bit of brownness. The point isn't to cook this through. It's gonna be all cooked through in the oven. So I'm just trying to get a tiny bit of color to get flavor. And then I like to have some type of liquid nearby. I have a homemade bone broth that I use to just pour a little bit in if I can see that the bottom starts to get pretty burned, because I don't want it to be black, because I don't want to have any burned flavor. I just want a nice brown on the bottom, so that, because the brownness is what's flavored, but you do not want your meat to taste burned. So before I sear it, it's really important to make sure that the meat is super dry, because the wetter it is, the harder it's gonna be to get that good sear. So I'm just laying down a few paper towels that I can pat it dry, and then I'm just gonna put a little bit of salt and pepper on both sides. And remember, when you're salting this, I like to add salt all throughout my cooking process. Like whenever I add the onions and I'm doing the vegetables and stuff, I like to add salt throughout all that process too. But you have to be careful with this recipe. You have to remember that the sauce that you're gonna be braising the meat in, the sauce is hopefully gonna reduce. So if you're adding enough salt to, like, whenever you're eyeballing how much sauce there is, remember that that volume is gonna condense. So you kind of wanna undersalt it a little bit, but not too much. These pieces are pretty thick, so I'm like kind of grabbing each piece to make sure that it's all dry on the side. And I know that some people like to trim a little bit of the fat here and there. These pieces, like this is, I guess some would say a little bit of fat, but I don't worry about trimming it just because I think the fat is so freaking delicious. So unless it's like a crazy piece that I think is just super out of place, I'm just gonna leave this as it is. I'm not really gonna touch it. So whenever I was looking for this, for like a braised beef recipe, I really wanted to have like a good braised beef recipe. All the recipes had wine, and I don't drink alcohol, and I know that alcohol burns off in the cooking process, but for some reason my body still gets super irritated even if I cook with alcohol. So I don't know what the deal is with that, but I just decided to kind of make up my own thing. Now I'm just putting salt and pepper. I usually just do one side. I'll put that side face down whenever I sear it, and then while they're down, I just salt the other side so that when I flip it, it's ready to go. So I'm being a little bit generous with this amount of salt just because I want to make sure that the meat is well seasoned. Meat always needs a little bit more than you think. Putting a little bit of pepper. Okay, and then I'm just gonna lay this in the pan. You can see it's already starting to smoke a little. Yee. Ooh, are you getting that? I'm doing this in batches, so not all of them fit in my big pan right now. So I'm just doing 4 and then I'll do the last 2, but I wanna make sure that whenever I do the last 2, there's not like an insane amount of burn on the bottom. Don't be afraid to just let it hang out, because in order for it to get that little brownness, you kind of have to just not touch it. So don't be over here like messing with it all the time. Just kind of leave it for a few minutes, like a minute or 2, and then take a little peek and then see what's going on. But you have to be kind of brave and just let it sit. I noticed that in other people's recipes, they first put flour on them. They dried it and then they rolled it in flour to then get like a really good sear on it. That's fine. It may get a really good sear, but personally for my diet, I don't like to have flour in my diet. I don't do very many like I don't do very many carbs. The only carbs that I do are fruits and honey. So flour is just not part of my diet, and I'd rather make this 100% compliant to my diet and just really healthy so that I can enjoy so much how it tastes. I don't have to worry about any little ingredients that I might regret. Ooh, look at this. That's what we want. It's nothing crazy. It's not a crazy sear. And again, you're not trying to cook these all the way through. So they're cut really thick. Wow, doesn't this look so good? It already smells so good and I've not even put anything in there. This is my all-time favorite recipe that I make. I make a lot of good stuff. And this is, I think, my absolute favorite. But what lets me enjoy a recipe truly, whenever it's so rich like this recipe is knowing that I used all good ingredients. So make sure that, you know, if you think you're gonna regret putting something in there, just don't do it. Everybody has their own preferences. So I made this up. I put all the things that I like in there. I love mushrooms. I put a ton of mushrooms. If you don't, just leave them out. So this kind of stuff is just, you know, you can always change things. So good, my love. I love this recipe so much. So just keep a plate nearby where then whenever your meat is done being cooked, you can put it on this plate. These pieces are almost done. I'm just gonna give them a few more seconds. But in the meantime, I'm gonna chop some of my vegetables just to pass the time. I'm just gonna quarter them. I don't really worry about, I hate super fine chopping. There's so many vegetables in this that if I did that, it would take forever. So I just do a rough chop. The vegetables are just to add flavor to the meat and to the broth, and nobody's gonna be upset if they have bigger vegetables. I don't even remember what I did. Anytime I make a recipe, I do so much research and I look at other recipes that are similar. I see what they do and then I go by my taste and what I want, and then I adjust things to my diet, of course. And then I kind of make up my own recipe. So then I write down afterwards what I did. So I don't even remember what I did. I have to be looking over there at my own recipe. The bottom doesn't look like it's too burned, so I'm not worried about deglazing the pot right now before I put this second batch in. And I'm just gonna leave that. This second batch is whenever you're gonna really notice some browning on the bottom, so just keep an eye out because again, you do not want any burned bits on the bottom because that burned flavor will then stay in your whole dish, so you don't want that. Okay, I think I'm already gonna turn on the oven at this point because it's all gonna come together pretty fast from here. So I'm gonna put the oven to 325. And make sure that you have a good amount of space in your oven, like you've adjusted your racks. I had to take one of my racks out because this pot is pretty big and you have to keep the lid on. So you wanna make sure that it's easy for you to check on it at like the 1 hour mark and at the 2 hour, 2.5 hour mark. So right now, after my second batch is just getting done, there's a lot of brown on the bottom, but it's not burned. So, but I'm keeping an eye on it because more important than a really nice sear to me is not having a burned taste. So I might even take this last batch out a tiny bit early. Now I'm gonna deglaze the bottom of the pot over here with my bone broth, homemade. Gonna make a crazy amount of bubbles and all this stuff. Very dramatic, but it's okay. I just kind of scrape it around a little bit too because sometimes there's little pieces of meat stuck on the bottom. And then right away I'm just gonna throw my onion. Scan, this is gonna be so good, you have no clue.
That looks incredible. It smells amazing.
And I'm gonna salt my onions at this point a little bit too. I always like to salt my onions. It makes them sweat a little bit better. But again, you wanna make sure that you're careful with your salt. You want it, if anything, undersalted a little bit, and you can always add salt later because the sauce is gonna be condensing. It's gonna reduce a bit. I'm just gonna cover those onions, let them sweat a little bit. So onions and mushrooms, they're both super water heavy, so they get a lot smaller whenever you're cooking with them. That's why I'm never shy to like add a ton of onion and make sure that I have a ton of mushroom, because it gets so much smaller as the water cooks out of it. And then I always have a bag of carrots that I just buy in bulk at Costco, and then I chop them so that whenever I need them for a recipe, because I use them so much in stocks and broths and stuff for aromatics. So I just have the bag in the freezer so that it's really easy for me to use them whenever I want. So I'm just gonna add some of that. So the very last thing that I'm gonna add here with my vegetables is the mushrooms, because those usually cook the fastest. So I'm ready to add those. I'm gonna add those now. And whenever I add my mushrooms, I don't know why, I always just like to add a last little bit of salt and pepper to them. So the times that I salt my vegetables are right after I add the onions and then right after I add the mushrooms. And again, I'm gonna undersalt a little bit here. I'm gonna control myself. Lid on, let it hang out. So what did I do? I don't even know what I did last time. So in the meantime, my chunks are now, they're not hot at all. I can handle them with my hands. I'm just gonna cut them into little cubes that are about like 3 to 4 inches like that. Okay, you're good. These are the decisions of life. Where to freaking cut on the meat. Oh, I put garlic in here too, allegedly. I forgot it last time too, that's so funny. And then garlic, depends on how much you like garlic. I love garlic, so I'm probably gonna put like, I don't know, maybe 6 or so cloves of garlic. And I'm just gonna give them a rough smash. I'm not even gonna chop them, and I'm gonna throw them in. It's gonna be so important that you capture how much cinnamon I put in here, because people are gonna hate me for the cinnamon. I'm just waiting here. I know my vegetables are done whenever the mushrooms are cooked through enough and they're soft enough to wherever I would eat them like right away as is. I don't really want them to be hard at all. So I'm just waiting for the mushrooms to get soft enough, and then I'm gonna add the rest of the stuff to make the broth. So now I'm gonna add in everything else that's gonna make up the sauce. So I'm gonna add in some fresh herbs. I have rosemary and thyme. This is 3 tablespoons of coconut aminos. And after the vegetables all reduced, there's a lot of water at the bottom from like the water of the onions and the mushrooms and everything. That's all flavor. You want to keep all that. I'm going to add 2 big spoons of tomato paste. Okay, and now I'm going to add in 4 cups of my homemade bone broth. The container's super big, so for me it's easier to pour it into this big cup, and I know this cup is exactly 2 cups worth. So I'm gonna do 2 of these big cups, but it's 4 cups total. So that's 2 cups. Oh my God. Looks so good. So I'm just gonna mix everything together to incorporate the tomato paste all the way and make sure that everything is going well. This is the most important part of it all. Non-negotiable, you have to add a tiny little bit of cinnamon. It's gonna be a small amount, but I promise it's gonna be so good, and it lets it feel warm. It just adds that extra little taste that you think, oh my God, this is like restaurant quality and flavor, and you don't know what it is. You can't pin it on anything because you'll never know that it's cinnamon, but it's just the tiniest little bit. Perfect, that's it. And then the other thing that I'm just gonna add the tiniest amount is of maple. You'll see in so many Hispanic dishes, whether it's like beans or whatever, they add the tiniest little bit of sugar, and it helps balance out the acidity of the things like tomato paste in the recipe. So I'm just gonna put a tiny, tiny bit of maple. So I'll show you how much. Honestly, I don't know if it does anything at all, but it makes me feel like I'm doing something. That's the truth. And I also forgot, I'm gonna add some bay leaves too. A lot of recipes call for 1 or 2, but these little, if you're using the dry ones, their flavor's so much weaker that I always put like 3 or 4. So I put like 3 big ones in there. I'm gonna add a 4th tiny one. Okay. So I'm just gonna taste it now, and I'm gonna see kind of how everything's going, see if I need to add like more tomato or more whatever. It's good. I'm just gonna add the tiniest bit of salt. Okay, so now I'm gonna be adding in the chunks of meat, and I'm just gonna bring this to a quick little boil before I go ahead and put it in the oven. And you want your meat to be sticking out of the broth. You don't want the broth to be completely covering the meat. So you'll see whenever we come over here. And then after it goes into the oven, you're gonna wanna check it at 1 hour, like about every hour. So you'll wanna check it at 1 hour, 2 hours, just to see that fluid level, to make sure it doesn't get too low. If it does get too low, you can add in more broth. But when I did this last time, I didn't have to add any more broth. It was fine. It's a bit of Tetris, trying to figure out how all these beef pieces are gonna fit in here, but totally worth it. Some of them are gonna be a little bit submerged. That's just life. It's not a big deal. But the point is that most of them are poking out. Okay, that looks so good. All the pieces of meat are in there. They're like a little happy family. They're all snuggled. They're so freaking cute. And then I'm just gonna bring it to a quick little boil and put it straight in the oven. There's gonna be this blood on the plate. That's all flavor. Just put it in there. Nobody's gonna be afraid of a little blood. No, no, no. Okay. It's almost ready. Okay, so now it's just starting to bubble. It looks incredible. You can tell that the bubbles are like the color of the broth and color is flavor, so it just looks incredible. I can't wait to have this. I'm gonna cover it, and then I'm gonna put it in the oven. If you have a nice, strong husband, I always like to have him do this because this pot is freaking heavy, but he's being the best and he's recording my videos for me, so I'm gonna have to be a big girl and I'm gonna have to do it myself. Oof, oof. Okay, the timer starts now, so I just put it in the oven. I'm gonna wait an hour before I check on it again, and what I'm checking for is that fluid level. Okay, so it's been 2.5 hours. Full disclosure, I actually didn't check the meat an hour even. I checked it 2 hours in, and the water level looked perfectly fine. When I've done this before, the water level really didn't change much, so I wasn't too worried about it. That's why I didn't check it at 1 hour and I was out doing stuff. So now that it's been 2.5 hours, now what I'm checking for is not so much the water level, but I'm gonna check for the tenderness. So I'm gonna put a fork in there and I'm gonna see if it goes in like butter. If there's any kind of resistance, I'm gonna keep the lid on there for a little while, but I'm pretty sure the fork is just gonna slide in there like butter. And if that's the case, the last 30 minutes of cooking, I'm gonna take off the lid and let that water reduce a little bit so it gets a little bit thicker. So that's what I'm gonna do right now, and I'm gonna get some shot of this. I'm seeing how easily this fork goes into the meat right here. Look, it's already falling apart right there. Totally fell apart. Yeah, it's pretty good. There's very little resistance. Some of them are so tender that it feels like you're putting your fork into nothing. And so if most of them are like that, then don't worry about having your lid closed for those last few. Just take it off so that so that the rest of the fluid can go ahead and reduce. Okay, so it's just hit the 3 hour mark. I'm gonna go ahead and look at my meat. I'm sure it's completely fine. I'm gonna take it out right now. So let's see how it's doing. Ooh. Oh my God. It looks incredible. You'll see that the tops are a little bit dark. It's okay, it's not burned. It's freaking delicious. And all around the sides of your pan, it looks like a horror show. There's like black all over the place, but I promise if you have a good pot with ceramic, it's not gonna be hard to clean. It looks and it smells amazing. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. I'll be posting more recipes on here in the future. And if you want more information about me, you can go to my website, ieatrealfood.org. And over there's a whole about me section, and you can also book appointments with me. I even have 20-minute fridge tours where if you want a quick, low commitment interaction with me, for 20 bucks, I have 20 minutes with you on the phone and I can look through your fridge and tell you if you're on the right track or if you need a little bit of help. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.